You can go sleep in your car or call Aunt Maeve. This house isn't yours anymore, Darren said, his voice clipped like he was reading off a script. I stared at him, not quite sure what I was supposed to say. The front door was still open behind him. I could see the kitchen table, the cranberry sauce I made still sitting in its bowl. I'd set the table last night. I'd bought the turkey. I'd lit the candles. And now he was closing the door on me. His wife stood beside him, silent arms folded across a brand new sweater I probably paid for. Neither one of them looked angry, just done. Tired of me, ready to move on. My suitcase had already been set outside, zipped and sitting upright, like a guest politely waiting to be dismissed. I looked down at it, then back at him. "All right," I said. "That's all." I picked up the pie, the one I'd baked at 5 a.m., and walked to the car. I didn't slam the door. I didn't ask why. I just drove. I didn't know where I was going until I passed the sign for Route 42. The trees were bare this time of year. No color, just lines of gray and brown like ribs. A mile off the road, the gravel drive curved into a clearing. The trailer stood at the back, crooked but steady like it always had. Silas left it to me when he passed. I hadn't come out since the funeral. I remember telling Darren we'd fix it up one day. He told me it wasn't worth the effort. Tonight, it was all I had. I turned the key. The lock clicked open. Dust hung in the air like breath in the cold. I stepped inside and set the pie on the counter, careful not to knock over the single cup sitting near the sink. The trailer wasn't empty. I had braced myself for mold-broken windows, maybe a mouse scurrying under the sink. But the light came on with one flick. The heater hummed low in the background. The air inside was dry, not fresh, but not stale either. There were 2 bottles of water on the counter still sealed. A paper receipt sat under a rusted magnet on the fridge. I pulled it free and looked at the date. 3 weeks ago. Hardware and insulation supplies. From a store Darren used to work at. I walked slowly through the narrow hallway. The carpet didn't crunch. Someone had vacuumed. The bathroom door was ajar inside a bar of soap, rested on the edge of the sink, barely used. My hand went to the bedroom doorknob almost on instinct. The mattress was stripped. No sheets, no blanket. But when I pressed my palm to it, it was still holding warmth. Whoever had slept here hadn't left long ago. He told me this place was condemned. Not worth cleaning out, he'd said. Too far gone. That was last spring. I stood in the middle of the room and felt my chest tighten. Not from grief, but from recognition. He hadn't forgotten this place. He had been using it. I walked back to the kitchen, filled the kettle, and set it on the stove. My hands moved on their own, doing what they always do when I need time to think. By the time the tea steeped, I had taken out the small, leather-bound notebook I kept in my coat pocket and sat on the top step of the trailer's porch. The woods were quiet. No wind, no voices, just the low murmur of trees settling into the cold. I wrote down everything I remembered, dates, comments, the moment Darren said, "There's nothing out there but old junk." I sipped the tea slowly, watching steam rise and curl around my face. When I stood up again, the floor creaked beneath me, right where it always had in the corner by the closet. The corner board still creaked the same way it did when we were kids. Silas and I used to slip playing cards beneath it. Secret bets, comic book clippings, once even a silver dollar we fought over for weeks. I hadn't thought about that in years. I set my mug down and knelt on the floor. The wood had darkened with time, but the edge was still loose. I worked a butter knife under it and pried gently. It popped up with a dry groan. Beneath it sat a steel box. Square, dented at one corner, but locked shut with a latch and keyhole. I stared at it for a moment, heart knocking louder than I wanted to admit. Then I pulled it out and used the same knife to snap the rusted latch. Inside, neat and solid stacks of bills bundled tight with rubber bands. Hundreds. I counted quickly. $68,000. Tucked below were 2 manila envelopes, one with my name in Silas's handwriting, the other with a county clerk seal. The first envelope held letters. Silas had been buying small rural lots and flipping them quietly for years. The trailer he wrote was never for living. It was a shield ugly enough to keep people out remote enough to hide paperwork. The second envelope held a deed. 12 acres surrounding this exact trailer. Zoned for agricultural use but just approved for development 3 months before he passed. The last item was a thick set of incorporation papers. A holding company. Salt Rock Partners LLC registered in my name. I sank down onto the couch and let the weight of it settle over me. Darren didn't know. He thought this trailer was trash. A dead end. But Silas had known better, and now it was mine. I folded the letters back into their envelope and placed everything into a bag I could zip. Then I turned off the lights and lay down on the bedclothes, still on the bag resting beside me. I slept with one hand on it, and the other curled tight beneath my chin. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I was awake before the sun. Cold air slipped in through the trailer seams, but I didn't reach for the heater. I sat at the table with Silas's folder in front of me and my old checkbook beside it. 4 years. That's how long I'd been quietly plugging holes in Darren's life. At first, it was helping him get back on his feet. Then it became habit. A missed payment here, a surprise insurance lapse there. I started covering part of the mortgage after he got laid off. Then he got rehired, but the help never stopped. He'd never asked directly, not once. It was always a sigh, a pause, a bill he forgot to mention. I gave, and he accepted. I thought that meant we had an understanding. Now, I understood. I logged into the bank account we used to share back when he was fresh out of college. My name was still on it. Joint account. I froze the card tied to his automatic withdrawals. Changed the password. Then I pulled up my personal card, the one he occasionally used just in case. I closed it. Finally, I removed myself as co-signer on his car loan. I called the credit union and made an appointment to ensure everything would be finalized. They asked me why. I said it was time. By mid-morning, I had a pot of coffee brewing and every document spread across the table like a quiet army. The Salt Rock deed had no encumbrances. The LLC was still valid, active, and in my name. The zoning approval from the county made the land worth nearly 10 times what it had been 5 years ago. Darren had erased me from his house, his holidays, his family dinners. But he'd forgotten something simple. I was still here. And the pieces he thought didn't matter. Old land, old names, old women were the ones holding everything up. I packed the folder back into my bag, made a list of who to call next, and stepped outside into the crisp light of a day I no longer owed to anyone. I heard the truck before I saw it. Tires crunching over gravel engines, struggling against the incline. When it came into view, I recognized the vehicle. It wasn't Darren's. He'd borrowed it from someone. The windows were down, and he had that sheepish, practiced look on his face, the one he used when he wanted something, but hadn't yet decided how to ask for it. He stepped out without calling my name. "I know you're mad." He started, hands tucked into the sleeves of a hoodie too thin for the cold. "But you're not thinking clearly, Mom." I didn't move from the porch. Didn't invite him up. I just stood with my arms folded the same way he had when he told me to leave. His eyes darted toward the trailer, then beyond it to the woods behind me. "You shouldn't be out here alone." "It's not safe." I almost laughed. He never worried about that before. "I'm not alone," I said quietly. He furrowed his brow, about to ask what I meant. Then he heard it. A soft buzz overhead. The drone passed above the clearing, slow and steady, circling the edge of the trees before dipping closer to the soil. Darren followed its path with his eyes until it returned to its perch on a tripod near the property line. It wasn't mine. A friend of Silas's, a developer, now had sent it. They were reviewing site options for a future cabin build. I'd sent over the lot coordinates 2 nights ago. His posture changed. Less concerned, more alert. Like a dog that just realized the stranger on its porch wasn't lost. It had a leash and a plan. "You've been busy," he muttered. I didn't blink. I learned from the best. We stood in silence for a few seconds longer. He kept looking past me as if the trees might speak first. But they didn't. Eventually, he turned and walked back to the truck. I didn't watch him drive away. I was already inside reviewing the parcel maps and circling the first plot I wanted cleared. 2 weeks went by without a word. Then Darren called 3 times in one morning. I didn't answer. The voicemails started short, then got longer. By the 4th message, his voice cracked. The mortgage hadn't cleared. The automatic drafts I used to cover rejected. His car payment bounced. His wife apparently had started noticing things. He didn't say sorry. He just kept asking me to call him back. Said it was urgent. Said they were in a bind. Said maybe we could meet for coffee. I put the phone face down and returned to my paperwork. At the county office, I signed and filed the parcel adjustment forms. The land around the trailer would be divided into 2 sections. The eastern half, already cleared, would be leased to a solar company out of Albany. The western slope, shaded with 2 natural clearings, was perfect for eco-cabin development. The man from the drone company had already sent estimates. Salt Rock Partners LLC would manage both projects. My attorney, a woman Silas once called the only shark who ever scared him, helped consolidate every asset under my name alone. No more shared signatures. No more co-signing for anyone else's dreams. I went to the bank that same afternoon, opened a new account. Quiet, clean, separate. Back at the trailer, I stood with the new blueprints spread across the kitchen table. Cabin sites marked in red. Drainage lines. Estimated earnings. I used to balance grocery coupons at this table. Now I was weighing long-term yields. I wasn't moving back into anyone's spare room. I wasn't going to beg for a corner of a house I'd helped pay for. That door had shut, and I had walked away before it slammed. This was mine now. All of it. Outside, a crew truck rolled into the clearing. 2 men stepped out, boots crunching against frost, and waved before heading toward the survey flags I'd posted. I grabbed my coat and walked out to meet them. The trees were quiet this morning, but I could already picture where the first cabin would stand. He looked smaller this time. His shirt was wrinkled, the collar twisted like he'd dressed in a hurry. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his voice had dropped its edge. When he stepped out of the car, he didn't walk toward me like before. He hovered, unsure, like the ground might shift beneath him. "You made your point," he said, hands in his pockets. "But this is serious. We might lose the house." I was standing beside my truck, freshly tuned, fully registered in my name now. I'd just picked it up from the shop that morning. "I didn't take your house, Darren," I said. "You gave me a sidewalk." He blinked. I could see the words trying to land, but they never quite did. He thought I was bluffing, that I'd come back if things got bad enough, that I was playing a game of pride. But pride doesn't sign legal forms. That week, the letter came. Not to me, to him. The bank confirmed the removal of my name from all co-signed agreements. The mortgage, the car, the revolving line of credit we once shared when he first got married. Gone. He called again, but I didn't answer. The second letter arrived 3 days later, this time from the brokerage. The joint investment account one I had opened for his education, then forgotten to close, was now terminated. All funds transferred. To me. He didn't get a warning. Just silence, followed by signatures. I didn't do it to punish him. I did it because it was mine. And because he'd spent years pretending it wasn't. I poured myself a cup of coffee and watched a hawk circle over the western ridge. The foundation crew had called that morning. Concrete would be poured by the weekend. I'd spent so many years asking for a seat. Now I was the one setting the table. By the time the wind shifted, I'd already packed the next round of documents into a folder and started marking the second plot. The crew arrived in the third week of December. The clearing stirred to life, voices calling over the hum of drills' boots, sinking into soil trucks, backing up with measured beeps. It smelled like cut wood and disturbed roots, the kind of smell that said something was starting. I walked the site each morning in my old boots and a canvas jacket clipboard in one hand, thermos in the other. The foreman, Russ, met me with updates. Foundation lines were marked, conduit, laid septic, planned for the southeast corner. He was efficient, polite, never once asked if I needed help understanding. I didn't. This land had been sleeping a long time. Now it was waking up. By late afternoon, I'd retreat to the trailer. The heater still grumbled and the floors still creaked, but the space no longer felt like a holding cell. It was mine. I didn't decorate. Just cleaned the stovetop, scrubbed the walls, and hung one photo above the tiny desk, Silas and me, 14 years old, fishing with tangled lines and too much sun on our cheeks. He was grinning. I wasn't. He always liked the chase more than the catch. I made soup most nights. Simple things. Beans, potatoes, a sprig of thyme. No calls. No messages. Not even to Darren. I knew he was still circling. A neighbor down the road mentioned he'd seen his truck parked on the ridge. I didn't go check. There was nothing for him here anymore. No checks. No keys. No corners to slip into when things got hard. Instead, there was progress. Tangible, loud, dusty progress. Beams were lifted. Gravel poured. Posts set into concrete that would hold weight long after I was gone. I didn't build it to prove anything. I built it because I could. By week's end, the first frame stood against the winter sky, rough, simple, perfect. I stood beside Russ as he reviewed the next week's plan, nodding along, pencil tapping lightly against the edge of my clipboard. The letter came in early spring. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Neat, careful, too careful. As if she wanted the envelope to carry weight it hadn't earned. I opened it slowly, standing by the window with the cabin site just visible through the trees. She said she'd left him. Said Darren had lied about the finances, about the accounts, about the trailer. Said she found out only when the mortgage company called and said the payments had stopped and there was no fallback. He'd told her I'd vanished, that I'd abandoned them. But she'd seen the drone footage online. A real estate photographer had posted it, just a short clip set to music, with the caption, "From forgotten trailer to future retreat center." It had made the rounds on a few local pages. Nothing viral. Just enough. She said she stared at the still frame cabin frames in the background, my truck parked near the trees, and felt something drop in her stomach. She didn't ask me for anything. Not forgiveness, not money, not even a response. She just said she thought I should know. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beneath the desk between the land surveys and paint swatches. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. I turned back to the sketches I'd been working on. Designs for the retreat signage. Simple pine posts with carved wood lettering. I penciled in the name Salt Rock Ridge. Below that, in smaller script, established 2025. My name wouldn't be large. Just in the corner, tucked beneath the LLC line, just like Silas used to do on the backs of his property deeds. But it would be there, the way he meant it to be. I adjusted one angle on the lettering, then closed the sketch pad and walked outside. The first daffodils were pushing up near the edge of the tree line, and the cabin frames had begun to cast longer shadows. I slipped on my gloves and headed toward the tool shed. There were signs to stain and posts to set before the weekend crew came through. They poured the last slab in April. The crew worked fast, practiced calling to each other over the hum of mixers and the scrape of shovels. I stood by the tree line at first, arms crossed, boots pressed into the soft spring ground. When they called for the final corner, I stepped forward. I carried a single stone in my palm, smooth round the color of ash. One Silas had kept on his desk for years. He'd found it the day we closed on the land said it looked like a seed. I placed it in the wet edge of the concrete just inside the northeast post. No words. Just wait. The crew packed up by noon. The last cabin stood framed, poured, and ready for sighting. The site was quiet again in the way new things are waiting to be filled. The retreat would open in the fall. There'd be no ribbon cutting, no speech. I didn't post it online. I didn't send out flyers or ask for help naming the trails. But still, my phone rang that night. A familiar number. I let it ring until it stopped. Later, I sat on the porch of the trailer. It was still standing still, creaky, still slightly crooked, but it had never collapsed. And neither had I. Sunlight filtered through the high branches, painting lines across the grass and gravel. I rocked gently in the chair I'd refinished myself. A mug of tea warmed my hands. The silence didn't ache anymore. It belonged to me. The land was mine. Not just legally, but in spirit, in use, in the decisions etched into its grain. The cabins were real now. The path was cleared. The bank accounts were clean. There was no one left to ask permission. No one left to beg for space. The story finally was mine, and as the breeze stirred through the pines, lifting the scent of new sawdust and wet bark, I leaned back and let it fill my lungs.